About 15 minutes ago, as I was setting up shop for this, two lights in here, and one of them proceeded to blow. And so it's considerably dark in here. And I'm seeing myself now live in the other thing, and it looks just fine, which is kind of scary. But anyway, so tonight I bring you Devin Heinle, who you know all as well as the original Grognard. Devin is served on some ships, and he's used to being in the dark. And in fact, he's sitting in a darkened room right now. How are you?
What's up, Ron? How are you? And yes, I like things dark. I hate the spring. I hate the summer. I love the fall and winter. I wish there were more dark hours in the day, but whatever. It is what it is.
Devin is our resident vampire, and
I wouldn't say vampire. I don't sparkle.
That's a millennial vampire. There's nothing millennial about either you or I.
Yeah, no, no.
All right, so Devin is the original Grognard, which means, I guess, that there were no such thing as a Grognard before he came around.
Oh, no, there were plenty of Grognards before me. I don't even like... It's a nickname that I kind of fell into and I just kind of latched onto and have stuck with. And honestly, when it gets down to it, I don't consider myself a traditional Grognard.
Well, for those
Grognard, I know my English and French people out there. It's Grognard. It's not Grognard. It's Grognard. I know how it's pronounced. I'm American. I'm going to pronounce it my way.
All right. So for those who may not know what that means.
All right, so a grognard. You go back to French Napoleonic times. A grognard. Grognard is French for grumbler, and it was a title bestowed on Napoleon's Old Guard. And to be part of Napoleon's Old Guard, you had to have been served at least 10 years. You had to be a certain height, and you had to have served in 3 campaigns. These were the elite of Napoleon's elite, and they acquired the name Grognards as grumblers because they were the only people that could complain to Napoleon and get away with it. He didn't even let his generals complain to him the way that he would listen to what these elite soldiers would say, and soldiers being soldiers, they're going to complain, gripe, moan about everything. So the Old Guard became known as the Grognards, the grumblers. Over the years, it's kind of morphed into in the wargaming community. The Grognard is the old crotchety, stick up the butt, and this started mostly from miniature gaming back in the 60s and 70s of the guys who would complain about everything, and they were the older crew, and it typically. For the Napoleonic era Grognards, it was a term of respect. For the war gamers in the 60s and 70s, it wasn't a term of respect. If someone called you a Grognard, it was not a compliment. And you started seeing it kind of die off in the 80s, as a lot of them died off. And really, you don't. It's true. So us young bucks back in the late 70s and early 80s, I mean, we're to the point now where we're the age where we're the grogs now. And fortunately, over the years from the 80s and 90s and up to now, the grog is in the military simming community is more morphed into just an old hand. And someone who grumbles. I was on the way I picked up the moniker of the original Grognard is I was on a forum.
You're going to answer every question I'm going to ask you all at once?
Maybe.
All right. So how did you become
the original Grognard? Right. How did I was on a forums group. It was a miniatures game that I used to play about 8-10 years ago called Flames of War. It's 15mm World War II. And the forums group I was on, I was pretty much the oldest guy in the group. It happens, Not a lot of guys my age know how to use a lot of forums. So, it's mostly the younger crowd that are on the miniature forums and stuff like that. Not always, but at least this one was definitely geared towards the younger millennial crowd. And I was part of a podcast, Flames of War podcast. and I did the podcast with these. And there was like 6 or 8 of us that would get together, and we do 3-hour podcasts on Flames of War, and they're still out there if you want to find them. But
Oh my God.
Trust me, you don't want to.
No.
They were kind of like chats with Al, only we was a podcast, and we just discussed this one particular war game and
3
military
hours on
strategy.
one game?
Oh yeah, we did this several times. I mean, the last time I checked, it's been 2-3 years since I've been with the guys, and they're still putting out podcasts. But regardless, since I was the oldest one, they just kind of started referring me to as the Grog or the Grognard, and it's like, all right, fine. But I'm just not the Grognard. I'm the OG. I'm the original. Because, like I said, I was 46, 47, and I think the next oldest guy was like 30. So yeah, I was the old school. I was the old guard gamer, and that's where my perspective came from. I gave them straight that this is how I see this game compared to the stuff that I was growing up with. And it just kind of stuck as the OG, the original Grognard, the Grognard's Corner. And so I just kind of glomped onto it because that's how those people in the forums knew me, as the OG. And so I started up my own podcast, did my own podcast for a while, and it just kind of stuck, and I didn't feel like changing it. So I don't consider myself a Grognard in the traditional military sim sense, because I am grumpy, and yes, I complain a lot, but I'm not an asshole about it.
No.
As one of the guys once said, he's one of the good grogs. So
No,
I consider that a compliment.
I heard the term for the first time. I've tried several times to pick up wargaming, and I run right back to sports because that I understand relatively well. Oh, you want to play this game? Well, here's the original German orders of OOB from World War I. Please enjoy this light reading while you figure out how to play the game. Just tell me where to move the tank to. Okay. Do I need to know whether the 13th went first, second, or fourth? Yes, you do. You must do.
There's a lot of correlation between sports simmers and war gamers. I mean, baseball fans, football fans, they can sit down and they can rattle off stats for a season going back decades, which really isn't that different than me being able to sit down and rattle off the different variations of the PZ3 Mark IV, and its armor penetration capabilities versus sloped armor at 45 degrees throughout the, it's just where our focuses went. I mean, sports simmers, they know stats and numbers when it comes to things sports. I know stats and numbers when it comes to things militarist and war games, because that's where my focus always was. So there is a huge similar mindset between the two, and I've said this before, you don't see a lot of intertwining between the two groups.
No, you're the only one that I know of in the community that does wargaming. I think our good friend Al and I have talked about doing something, but that's kind of like you doing that football game once or twice.
Oh God!
Here's my cat right there. So
there's Emily.
So we'll see if when Emily's out, the fish comes out. All right. So it's kind of interesting that you say that, because I don't think you're all that old.
I don't feel old, and I don't look. My body may feel.
All our bodies feel old.
Trust me. No, I mentally sometimes think. I think I stopped mentally growing when I was about 25. And I think my mindset has remained the same. But it comes down to, how am I supposed to act at 50? I don't know how I'm supposed. I've never been this old before.
I'm 47, and it's kind of interesting that you talk about being the old man on the forums that you associate with. Before I got involved in this community, you go into the sports simming boards. Well,
sports,
and and at 47, I'm still a baby. These are people who get piss and moan in their 60s and 70s, and it's like, I can figure out when you were 14 years old just by the time that how you wrote this post. My word, it's okay. It's not. I'm not picking on Clinton Parks here. There are just some people on the sports board community. It's like, it's okay. Mickey Mantle's been retired a long time. There are good. Have you seen this guy named Trout? He's pretty good.
And you see, in the military sim community, those guys would be considered grogs.
Right.
It's just.
And it's like, no, but so it's kind of weird because you're not much older than I am, and that you'd be considered old for the community. And those of
Well,
like
for yes and no. I mean, for the that community that I was
for I
part of
guess the
was part
computer
of a
community, yeah.
well, it was part of a forums group that was mainly focused on more millennials. There are other communities out there, Miniatures Page, Consim World, Board Game Geek. There are a bunch of them where, yeah, it's like, all right, I'm 50. Then there's guys a lot older and a lot younger. It just happened to be that forum that I was on at that time definitely had a much younger crowd. But you go to the more, I don't know, big name traditional military sim boards, and yeah, it's like it, I I started gaming when I was 12,
That
and
that was my next question. What got you into it?
so I don't consider myself an old hat. Granted, I've been doing this for 38 years now, but I don't consider myself an old man because I don't feel like I'm 50, but obviously I am. But I don't know. I guess it's just a mindset that I still consider myself a young buck when it comes to how I perceive myself in the military community. But you get down to it, it's like, nah, I'm getting up there.
We're both up there, and as Chris
Yeah,
can
we
tell,
are. We are.
Chris, who also does ham radio, and I've got a ham radio license. They would call us Elmers because we're sitting there helping other people in the community. That or we ate a lot of glue as we were kids. One of the two.
Glue tasted good.
Yes, it did. Yes, it had a very clean taste to it.
Yes, it did.
All right, so let's go back to it. You're growing up on a farm in Colorado. You're watching a lot of war movies and westerns.
I did at that.
So what got you into actually wanting to play those type of games?
Uh, in 1980, my dad and my parents both decided they needed to move from Colorado back up to Seattle, where both of their parents, both of the my grandmother on both sides were both living by grandfathers. Both my grandfathers by that point had died. So dad and mom decided we needed to move back up to Seattle to help take care of their parents, their surviving parents. And we moved in with my grandmother Crow, my grandmother on my mom's side. And when we moved up there, my grandma Crow bought both my sister and I, just a little toy, a little something. I can't remember what she got my sister, but for me, she got me a model of the USS Enterprise. One of the old Tamiya ship models, the
Not the Star Trek
1/1200 scale. No, not the Star Trek, the actual aircraft. Then it was the nuclear powered one. And for some reason, this was like sixth grade. For some reason, it just sparked an interest in me. And I read the little blurbs on the side, and it's like it was this big fight scene. And even though the nuclear powered Enterprise never was in a fight, but whatever. But it just looked really cool, and it's like, oh, I want to read up on this. So when I started going to school, sixth grade, the new school up here, the first thing I did was hit the library, and I just started consuming all these books on World War II. And then eventually, up at one of the malls, we had a little hobby store. It was a model store, a train store, and it had a bunch of war games in it. And my eyes just, exploded to the thought that I can play a game covering this World War II cool stuff. This is awesome. So, I saved my pennies and my dimes up, and the very first war game I ever bought was a little game called Ice War from Metagame Concepts, and this is what was known back in the day as a micro game. It was $2.95.
That's cheap.
And yeah. Well, considering with the big full box sets were like $20. You gotta remember this is like 1981, so prices were a little bit different back then. So, hey, I could afford $2.95. Took me 3 weeks to save up my loss, but I got it, and and I just played it completely wrong. I mean, I'm 11 or 12 years old. I'm not comprehending a lot of what I'm reading, but I'm having fun with it. I'm throwing dice and I'm moving counters around. And it just kind of cascaded from it. Got to the point when I was in junior high that my mother actually put a moratorium on me buying any war games. All the money I was making, I was buying. I didn't care. I just buy a war game.
You've just described my childhood, except for it comes down to baseball cards.
Exactly.
And what I watch on television.
When we're kids, we have our hobbies and we invest into it. And so mom said, no more games for 6 months. I'm like, yeah, all right. As soon as the 6 months was up, I was right back to buying them. But
Wow, that's 6 months. I
Oh,
got banned from
agonizing.
I got
Agonizing.
I got banned from sports for a week when I was 10, 11 years old, and this was in the pre-cable ESPN days. So just Saturdays was the worst. But even the almanacs I would read through, she took paper clips to them so I couldn't accidentally sit there and read the baseball stats from the World Almanac. I mean, she'd had enough of that. So I know what you went through, brother. We got through it okay.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, like I said, but I mean, I get where she was coming from because I was focusing all my time on it. It's like, all right, fine. That's when I think that summer I was working running the paper route with my grandmother because she had a motorized paper route, like 800 customers a day, and I made like $10 a day. And my sister and I would alternate back and forth, and half of that money went to buying school clothes for the next year. But my sister, I think by the end of the summer, we had both saved up about $150. My sister bought a little black and white TV. I bought an Atari console, and that's where my other addiction came from for video games.
That was probably a little. Now your fish has come out a little bit as the
Did
cat.
he poke? Yep, he's poking his nose out.
And the cat's falling asleep. She's bathing herself.
He's poking his nose out a little
so
bit.
the pets are now on display. I know they're dancing. So the video gaming, I'm sure, was a little more social for you because
not really.
No, not really, because how many 12-year-olds are into Avalon Hill games?
Not many, but by the same token, I didn't have a lot of friends, so I just would stay inside and play my video games by myself. I was not very social as a child.
What was your love on the Atari?
It was either Pac-Man or Asteroids or Missile Command. Those were the two. Probably one of those three games I put dozens and dozens and dozens of hours into, and they're all repetitive. I mean, my wife bought me a little retro Atari station a couple of years ago for Christmas. It had like 112 old school Atari games into it. It's like, yes, this is cool. I love some of these games. I sit down and play, and it's 5 minutes later. It's like, I used to play the crap out of. What the hell is this stuff? So it was an interesting, eye-opening experience.
Someone gave us an Atari secondhand. We had the money to buy one, and I remember that was right around the time that Pac-Man came out. And since I could operate a joystick but not hit any buttons, Pac-Man was the game I actually played.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, because it's just the stick. And see, that's the thing. A lot of these kids these days don't know about. It's like we had a stick and a button.
Yep.
That was it. I take a look at my 360 now, my 360 controller, and it's got like 42 buttons on.
Yeah, I couldn't.
And they all do something different, and it's like, nah.
And before that, I don't know if they had for Tank or whatever games the Mattel sports games, the basketball and the baseball. I mean, that's what we had for our Game Gear and Game Boy and all that, and we liked it. It had one game, it had no official licenses, and it was a dot of light. And it was the only thing that anyone under the age of 18 used a 9-volt for. But that's another story. That's another story. So you go through high school and you play these games. When did you take the next step into the Avalon Hill realm of gaming?
Games? Pretty much did not too long after I started playing war games. I mean, it was the Avalon for me at the time. Avalon Hill was the premier war gaming. You got to remember back then we didn't have a lot of war games companies. We had Strategy and Tactics,
right?
Which was SPI, which put out the Strategy and Tactics magazine. We had Avalon Hill. We had Simulations Canada, and we had Game Designers Workshop. That was pretty much it. Those were the only big companies we had, and there were some minor companies too, Metagame Concepts and a few other smaller ones. But Avalon Hill, and the reason I loved Avalon Hill is because they had mounted map boards. I mean, the map boards were mounted on cardboard, so you can lay them down flat. And all the other games, SPI, GDW, SCI, it was all paper maps. And that just drove me nuts. It's like, no, I don't want paper map because paper maps, they bow up, especially on the creases. Avalon Hill maps set flat. It's that simple little thing. So I was always more attracted to Avalon Hill games, and that's what most of my focus went into for the longest time. Then I started branching out to other companies. FASA, when they came out with Robotech in 84, 83, something like that. But yeah, no, I jumped feet first into the hobby as soon as I could, and have sunk into it ever since.
So you've mostly always been, from the start, you were a solo player then.
I'm still a solo player. I've been a solo player most of my life.
Yeah, we'll get into that in the videos because there's some questions I want to ask. Rob, with the excellent Dinah's cousin from another mother, says hi to you, specifically to you.
What's up, Rob?
And Robbie and Dave Gardner is joining us with some cool prescription or non-prescription medications. And DJ John is there, and Robbie Wartburg's dad has a ham radio license as well.
Sweet.
So your love of wargaming was that the primary reason you went in the Navy, or?
No, I knew I was going into the Navy long before. My father was Navy as well.
That's a family thing.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a family thing. My father, all of his brothers. I have two uncles that were in multiple services. My uncle Vern on my dad's side was Air Force and Army. My uncle Kenny on my dad's side was Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah, and then I think Uncle Vern. I have another Uncle Vern on my mom's side. He was Marine, and I think he was Air Force as well, something like that. Basically safe to say, my family's heavy military influence. And when I was about 8, my father gave me a copy of his Naval Blue Jackets manual, which is, books about that thick. It's just kind of a primer on, they give it to everybody in boot camp. This is what Navy life is expected to be like. And I was just fascinated by that. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And so I decided, when I was 8 years old, I'm going in the military. There's no doubt about that. So, and, eventually when the time came, I wanted to go in between my junior and senior year. A buddy and I were both going to go in on an early entry program.
Talking 86, 87, 88.
86, 87. Buddy of mine and I, the Navy had it's not really delayed entry, early entry, but you go into boot camp between your junior and senior year. You're in the reserves during your senior year. As soon as you get out of senior year, you go active duty. I had some health issues and concerns when I was a teenager, upper respiratory, and since I was 16, 17 at the time, I needed my folks' signature, and my dad said, no, not going to risk you going to boot camp with your health issues. And that, of course, devastated me. And then I was like, all right, I kind of figured, all right, I'm not going to be able to go into the military then. Get out of high school, start going to college. I was going for a law enforcement degree. And after the first quarter, it's like, this is crap. This sucks. I hate this college experience. And so I just said, screw it. Went down. I'm 18 years old. I went down to the recruiter. And 2 weeks later, I'm stepping off the bus in Great Lakes, Illinois at boot camp going, what the fuck have I just done to myself?
The first time you'd been, well, I wouldn't call Illinois the East, but certainly east of the Rockies.
That was the first time I had been east of Colorado. So yes, I hadn't really, between that, Colorado, Washington, and then we'd gone down to California because that's where some of my mom's family was at. But yeah, that was, and that was the first time I'd been out in the real world. It's like, you're in high school. College doesn't count as the real world either. I'm sorry, it doesn't, boys and girls. It's not. Even back in the late 80s, it wasn't the real world. So yeah, boot camp was quite an eye-opening. And the funny thing is, I had been in JROTC when I was in high school, so I thought I knew what I was getting into. I thought I knew what I was going to. No.
And so you served. So you eventually did you ever? Were you ever an officer?
Oh God, no. No, I was enlisted. My father told me, it's like, if you're going to go into the military, get an education, become an officer. I didn't listen to him. I just went in as enlisted. I never really wanted to be an officer. Even now, all these years later, I don't think I would have wanted to be an officer. There's a higher well, at the time there was a higher standard of performance and you needed the education. And I didn't, I already tried the college thing. I despised the college thing. So I wasn't going to get a 4-year degree just to become an officer. I was happy being an enlisted man. I was one of those guys who was just haze gray underway. You know, I was in love with the sea. I was happy doing my job, dungarees for life type guy. I was planning on doing 30 years. I did want to do 30 years. I didn't want to do just 20. I wanted to do 30. And I was looking at going through the Chief Warrant Officer, which is enlisted officer program. But I just never had the time to make it to that point. And that's that. I think that would have been nice, but you know, we'll never know.
So you obviously served in the first Gulf War then.
I was. My little butt was off the coast of Kuwait for several months during that little kerfluffle in the Persian Gulf.
Water everywhere.
Well, not in the Gulf, really. I mean, it's very shallow there, and you're not very far away from land at any point. Now, in the Pacific, we used to make donuts in the Pacific. It's like, yeah, join the Navy, see the world. They don't tell you that 70% of the world is water.
So, what did you enjoy most about your time in the Navy, outside the fact that you could pretty much do what you wanted when we weren't shooting things?
Blowing stuff up. I was a weapons technician. I was a weapons expert. Officially, my official job title was Gunners Make Guns, which means I worked on operated naval gunfire systems and small arms systems and anything that fired a projectile, launched a missile, fired a torpedo. That's what I did. That's what my job was. On 2 of the ships I was on, I was a shipboard armorer, which meant I spent most of my time in the ship's armory working with small arms. But I was qualified and fully rated for 76 millimeter, 3-inch 50 gun mounts, 40 millimeters, 25 millimeter chain guns, every small arm in existence in the Navy, and a few that weren't official. So yeah, I like shooting stuff. I like blowing stuff up. 4th of July doesn't do anything for me anymore, I'm afraid to say. But aside from it doesn't. It just, oh, look, pretty explosions. I used to blow stuff up with bigger.
And you still have all your fingers and toes, which is pretty.
I got all my fingers and toes. My hearing, that's yeah. I have permanent tinnitus, and it's the sound of freedom ringing in my ears forever. So,
getting some good stories in the chat. Dale Lonsdale did 22.5 years in the Navy. Where'd you serve, Dale?
God, very cool. Very cool.
Anthony, Bleacher Bums Gaming, his son is in the Navy and has enjoyed his time around, except for when he was hunting pirates in Somalia.
I didn't hunt pirates in Somalia, but I did hunt drug runners down off the South and Central America. But I can't talk too much about that.
I bet you can't.
And Freedom of Information Act hasn't completely expired on that one yet. But aside from the job of doing, I was one of those guys that enjoyed being at sea. I loved being haze gray and underway. I was happy when we were floating around the ocean, traveling from port to port. Aside from the simple fact that I got to go port to port, and I have, there's very few countries in the Pacific I haven't visited.
Hold on. Before you expand on that, Anthony, Bleacher Bums Gaming's son, is currently in Washington State. He's a
master at arms. I'm guessing
master of arms. And Glenn Bonesteel had the same problem as you. She was a CTM. I'm not sure what that is. CTM?
I'm not sure what CTM.
Anywho, so you've been to most of the countries in the Pacific. Any favorite?
Yep. Bremerton. I lived in Japan for 2.5 years.
Oh, nice.
Really enjoyed my time in Japan. Great country. The good thing is most everybody there spoke English. It was the early 90s. So Japan was just taking off on their tech boom. The country was exploding all over the place. You watch the old, you remember the original Blade Runner with the city of neon? That was Japan. You go to Tokyo, Shinjuku, Shibuya, any of the entertainment or prefect districts in around Tokyo. Japan was a great, and I regret leaving it. I regret not being able to get back to it. I should have never left Japan, but that's a whole other story. Aside from that, favorite ports, I'm going to say Philippines and Thailand, but I'm not going to go into why.
Yeah, we kind of know why, Devin.
But aside from just the sheer military aspect of it, I think, and I can say this with age, it's just the brotherhood that I had with the guys that I served with.
I'm sure
the guys that, especially, the guys that I worked with during the Gulf War, especially, I mean, those guys are still my brothers. I still love them with all my heart, and you can't explain it. If you didn't serve, you can't explain why you have that close brotherhood. It's a buddy of mine. He actually still lives in Japan with his wife. About once a year, he'll come back and visit his parents. We always try to stop for coffee real time. And it's like, we'll see each other and we still give each other a huge hug.
Sure.
Still brothers, still shipmates, still friends. And that's how it is. Well, yeah, there's a lot of guys you may not have liked when you served with them. And there's some guys you may have flat out hated, but you still consider them your brother. And we don't have that in the civilian world. And it's infuriating to the nth degree.
But I suppose, by the way, CTM means cryptologic.
Oh, crypto. Yeah. Yep.
And Glenn says that one reason she did it was because the recruiters didn't know what it was either. But,
they don't put the smartest people in recruiting. It's we need a recruiter. All right, you're an E5 and E6. Let's put you on recruiting.
But I suppose that the brotherhood of, even though, as far as the history of American warfare is concerned, the Gulf was a piece of cake compared to other things. You're still putting your life on the line in there, and you depend on each other for survival. And I can certainly understand why there would be a brotherhood for that, whether you like that person at the time beforehand or not. If you don't work together, you're in a world of hurt.
Well, a little bit different in the Navy than it is for like the ground pounders on the shores, okay. But still, I mean, I was never in as much danger, as the guys that were fighting on the land. It's just the nature of naval warfare. But there was some fighting that we got into, and there was some combat operations that we did
with the Iraqis, though.
Well, no, there was the big one we did with the Iraqis, and like I said, I can't speak about the counter drug ops being, but anyways, contrary to what a lot of people believe, there actually was a very large naval, for the 80s to 90s, there was a rather large naval engagement that we were involved in. It actually was only over a 12-hour period. I can't remember what they officially call it, but we sank like 16 of their boats. I don't want to call them ships because they didn't have any ships. They had boats, patrol boats, mine layers, stuff like that. It was a 12-hour gun battle that we engaged in to sink all these ships over a 12-hour period. And most of them were knocked out by airstrikes. But our ship did engage in some gun-to-gun action with one of the Iraqi warships, and there were some casualties on the other side. We'll just leave it at that.
Oh, that's fine. My grandfather was in the Navy in World War II.
Different, yep, definitely more mad respect for my brothers that served in World War II.
He protected Brazil from itself, I think. He didn't see it, but I think I told you this on Chat with Al. My dad's father served in the army in Europe, and that was not all fun and games.
Nope.
I think it was either Bulge or Arnhem, but anyway, there was in the Netherlands or Belgium, and there was Germans on 3 sides and water on the 4th.
Yep,
not fun. So, how long were you in the service for?
ID Jester had a question. What size ship was I on? I was on 3 ships the 7.5 years I was on. First was an Austin class troop transport, which was 400 sailors and a battalion's worth of Marines, usually. And then the 2 other ships I served on were Perry class frigates, USS Kurtz, FFG 38, USS John A. Moore, FFG 19. Kurtz was the stealth ninja frigate of 7th Fleet, and John A. Moore was the Jammin' Johnny. So yeah, those both were supposedly have a crew complement of 180. We usually ran about 120, except for during the war when we had a lot of attached, and we went up to like 200. So
Right.
but yeah, back to your question. Sorry.
Anthony's kid, by the way, was attached to the Nimitz.
I never wanted to be on a carrier. Carriers are too big. You could do 4 years on a carrier, go out to the real world, run into somebody who was on the ship at the same time you were and had never met him. No, that's too big to be.
It really is a city, a floating city.
4,000 to 5,000 men. Yeah, well, at my time it was 4,000 to 5,000 men. 4,000 to 5,000 people now.
Right. All right. So how long did you serve?
7.5 years. I ended up pulling a medical discharge. After I left Japan, I did shore duty for a little while. Realized that, yeah, this shore duty thing sucks. I want to get back to Japan. So ran a request sheet up to the captain. It's like, you really don't need me. You've got me working over in the motor. I'm not even working in the weapons department. You got me in the motor. You don't need. Okay, yeah, well, if you want to go back out of the fleet. So I called the recruiter, says, hey, I want to go back out of the fleet. In fact, I called my old ship. They got a billet for me. I want to go back to my old ship. Go back to the Kurtz. And the recruiter said, yeah, no problem. Oh, you've been away from Japan for more than a year. Clinton's put in a new policy. You need to go through a new physical. All right, cool. No problem. I've been in the military 6.5, 7 years at this point. And so I go in for this full medical. And at that point, Clinton had decided he wanted to try to get as many people out of the service as possible because he was cutting military budget. And I have allergies. And as I said before, I had issues with my lungs in high school. Never had been a problem. 6.5 years I'd been in the Navy. 5 years I had spent out in the fleet. Never been a problem. Oh, yeah, on a boat. I'm on a boat. But the docs were under orders. Even the smallest reason, kick them out. So they came across that, and you're out of here. I fought it for 6 months. I went to the Judge Advocate General, and at the end of the day, sorry, too bad, presidential decree, medical discharge. 6 months earlier, 6 months later, I would have avoided it all completely, and I probably would have done my 30 years, but like a dumbass, because I wanted to get out to the fleet before my time was up, it's just one of those things. I just happened to get caught up in the trap at the worst possible time.
Oh.
So. And the worst part was I was 6 months away from putting on E6.
So the reserves weren't even an option for you? Because I have friends that.
No. Once you, it was a medical. Can I even do reserves? Like, nope, you're done. You're gone.
So you don't have to share what you do now. So what have you? But basically, what did you do after?
Well, I blew up stuff when I was in the military, so there's not really that much of a civilian correlation.
I don't understand.
Really? I did a lot of security work. I did security work for a mall. I did security at a hotel. I got into retail loss prevention, which was really cool. I was one of those guys that would sit in the back room watching the cameras, catching shoplifters.
I did retail for 10 years. I know all about loss prevention. And bang, 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 bang. Yeah,
I had a lot of fun with that. Currently, right now, I'm kind of just an unemployed house husband, caretaker, I guess you could say. My wife has advanced Parkinson's disease, and our roommate is legally blind. So I've been told in no uncertain terms, you're not allowed to go back to work. So,
but you are working. You're working very hard.
I am working as a caretaker, but I am not working outside of the home.
Yeah. My wife goes to work and takes care of people.
And takes care of you.
And then comes home and takes care of me. So I fully understand and can appreciate what you do. And I, never, when Sarah said, I want to be in LNA, you want to do what? But you do this already and you don't get paid for it. You get other things, but the money's not. Well, maybe once in a while I get to dinner or something like that. No, I want to do this for a living. Are you sure? I'm not getting. I'm not faking this. It's not those arms aren't growing. No, I want to do this. And so here we are, 23 years later, and the hairline's receded, the belly has gone up and gone back, and no. So no, I mean I wish my wife was here. She would have. She does not know that about you, and I think she would, can give you a deeper sense of appreciation of just how tough that is. All right, that's enough of the maudlin portion of the program. And she can tell you that I'm a giant pain in the ass at times too.
So am I. So,
Oh
but
yeah.
I'm not the one taking care of me. So. Just ask my wife. I'm a complete jerkbag sometimes.
Thank you, bleacher buns. You don't become a diabetic by yourself. You need to have some help with that. And trust me,
Bleacher Bums asked me how long have we been married. 95, so 24 years.
24 years. Yeah, good. It'll be 21 for us, and not you and I, but for my wife and I in August.
Ron, I didn't know.
Hey, we seem to have it's kind of interesting as I go through and we talk with people, as I talk with people, how much I have in common with them, even if it's not necessarily the same exact thing. Because I remember going into KB Toys and looking at,
oh yeah,
what they got here? I never even, the money wasn't gone by the games, because I would go to an aunt's for the Super Bowl every year, and that was the weekend that the Topps baseball cards came out. And so that money was gone. You buy those rack packs at 42, and
yeah.
Oh yeah. No gum in those, but oh yeah, that was great. Okay, anyway, so if chatting back and forth with other people, obviously, because we have a couple more gaming questions, at least our hardcore gaming questions.
Yep.
And, one of the things that Clinton Parks, who also served in the first Gulf War in Afghanistan and some other places, is that he has no interest in doing that whatsoever. Sure, his experiences in warfare were different with yours. You are still quite active in playing war games. Didn't change. Did one life experiences not change the other to take away the enjoyment? I mean,
not really, because I've been barrels hot. I've been active gunfire against bad guys. I'm just going to leave it at that. But I've never put the correlation of what I did in real life to what my gaming was, because my gaming has been part of who I am since I was 12 years old. To try to divest myself of that, I just don't think I could do that. There are topics that kind of make me don't think I'm going to touch that, but I don't begrudge other people wanting to do that. It's just not something I'm going to do. I know a lot of guys who, a good friend of mine, who actually he just got his promotion to full bird colonel, was in Afghanistan and Iraq, after the second war, and he led troops in the field. He was a combat engineer. He ran fire bases, and stuff like that. And he comes back and he has no problem. It's like, all right, fine. He was stationed in Korea for a while. We played a game, a 1985 Korea goes hot scenario. I was playing the North Korean attack, or no, he was playing the North Korean. And I was playing the South Korean American forces, and there was just one particular battalion. He just put everything he had into to wiping it out. And I sat back a little bit and I thought about it. It's like, that's the battalion you served with when you were in Korea, wasn't he? He goes, yep, maybe it was. So, and for me, there are naval war games that had my first ship on it. Sixth Fleet, I've mentioned it a few times, which is 1985 Cold War goes hot in the Mediterranean, that had the ship I was stationed on at the time. And when a bunch of us used to play, it's like, yeah, we'd sink the Duluth every single time we'd get a chance. So it never really, gaming is gaming. It's a game. It's like chess. It's like Stratego. It's like Chutes and Ladders with more rules, but it's a game.
right.
So I'm able to divest myself from that. Now, there may be, like I said, there may be topics that I'm not going to touch, and there's going to be topics I may not to cover.
Drug running in the Caribbean is not a game you're going to pick up and play.
No, actually, I probably would play that. If there was some kind of game like that, I would probably pick that up. Most of the time, from anything from like the Gulf War, it was so one-sided. It's not really even fun to play, because either you're NATO and you're going to raffle stop the Iraqi forces, or you're the Iraqi forces and you're going to get raffle stopped. It's just not fun to me, not because I have any moral turpitude about it. It's just, it's not a balance.
It's so one-sided.
Yeah, it's not balanced. It's not one-sided. Give me something that's similar. World War II, a large chunk of that. Most wars have been, all right, you can at least make a reasonable facsimile where both sides have a chance at victory. The Gulf War, it wasn't there. And so
you could make a case, probably except for the Italians, of how the Germans and the Japanese could have won the Second World War.
oh, I'm a hypothetical person. I've done that lots.
Kirk asks, what's your favorite computer war game system?
Let's see, what day of the week is it?
It's Thursday, the 21st.
Okay, Thursday. I think Thursday it's going to be the John Tiller series. John Tiller used to design war games for a company called, and most of you are in the war game community, Talonsoft, back in the early 90s. And a lot of Tiller's main base program hasn't changed in 30 years, but I enjoy Tiller software games, his World War II, his strategic stuff. Man, not so much his squad level stuff, but he's got enough topics out there and they've got enough meat to them to interest me. He just doesn't do scenarios. 10, 12, 20 scenarios, whatever. His campaign games are what just suck me in. I've got one of them I just recently completed was Budapest, the Germans attempting to relieve the siege of Budapest in 1945. It is a 300-turn massive campaign game. And yeah, that completely. It's like when I was also doing Operation Sea Lion from Tiller Software. That's 168. Yeah. I mean, that is what draws me in. I don't like the scenarios so much because it's like, all right, I can sacrifice everything I can just to achieve these scenarios, and who cares what happens after the battle. But these campaign games where you're talking days, weeks, months, and preservation of forces, and preservation of supply lines, and that is what drags me in. I can't say Operational Art of War. I've played it, but I don't like the Operational Art of War. To me, it's the Operational Art of Supply Lines. The old Combat Mission series, I used to love that. There's just been a lot of quality war games that have come out over the years, and so many that I've played that I've forgot. Scourge of War series, I wish the UI was a little bit better in Scourge of War. I'd love to do that more. I've got the Gettysburg. I'd love to get the Napoleonic and Quatre Bras and the few other the Napoleonic ones, but the UI just is crap. But there's a lot of good computer war games out there. It's just what you're trying to find what works for you.
And you've done stuff with Itinerous Hobbit too. I mean, he's in the painting the wargaming miniatures, and you guys had that great
miniatures
time and all that. And you said, and I was surprised, that this might have been something that we actually said on the air or off the air, that there's just as much of a split in the wargaming community between miniatures and computers and NATO counters and those who think the Paradox games are war games, which they're definitely not. And everyone else, just like there isn't a sports game between the cards and the dice and the computer and the console. And
one of the reasons why I think there's such a schism between like miniature gamers and hex encounter and Euro style is that because the stakes are so small. Really, who cares? At the end of the day, who cares what you play? But for some reason, people have got to make a really big issue. I don't care what you play. Play what makes you have fun.
Exactly.
Don't badmouth the rest. And you see it. You see it in the in the sports community. The cards and dice guys versus the computer simmers. And I swear I have not seen you guys get bloody with each other. I mean that is just raw down.
I don't get it.
Brutal.
I don't get it.
I don't get it either. But there are some people who have to hold on to that. Their hobby and their idea is what's correct, and devil take the rest of you.
I mean, there are things that I think I've talked about that I'm not the world's biggest fan of as games, but when I talk about that in a game in a life that I don't like, I'm not trying to downplay it. I'm not a big fan of dead ball baseball either, but I'm not going to get on people because they like it better than what I like or the designated hitter. And it's the same thing. You're absolutely right. I mean, this pie is only so big, but there's plenty enough to go around for fat boys like me that if you want to eat it, whatever you want to eat, you can continue to make it. Because just like the wargaming, it's all about using your imagination. Just because my imagination is different from yours doesn't mean that mine is right, yours is wrong.
That's why I don't see more of interconnectivity between the sports and the war game players, is because we're all recreating history. When
Absolutely.
you get down to it, that's what we're doing. Each of us, in our own way, is recreating history due to historical parameters. And there's one other guy that I know. I can't remember his name, but Panzer Digest. He does a lot of the play.com. He does strat, but he does a lot of regular traditional wargaming too. He doesn't have a YouTube channel. I follow him on Facebook, but aside from him, there's just me, him. I know Jester has done some wargaming stuff in the past, but you would think there'd be more, and there's just not a lot of it
There's
out there.
there's not a lot. When I went through, because I asked ID the same question I asked you before. What do you want to talk about? Find out yourself. Okay, thanks a bunch. And I went through his playlists on his channel and was stunned at the breadth of what he did, including the biggest resource hog I think in the history of computers, City Skyline. I love the game to pieces, but by God, it could bring it could bring a supercomputer to its knees, especially if you had enough assets.
And
Would
if you
you
got enough
consider?
mods into it, yeah, I
Oh my!
used to play City Skylines a lot
Oh
as
my
well.
God! What do you mean? No, no. Do you want to actually listen to music while you're playing? Maybe, maybe. Will it run it any slower? Look, it took a week to actually build a house, so it's still. Oh, anyway, enough about that. Which brings me to my next topic is I watched your first video today. Do you remember what your first video was?
It was an unboxing for a Polish war game company, buddy of mine, Wojciech Berlin, 1945, I believe.
Exactly, and I was surprised how polished you were because I would hate to go back. I think the first game I did on my channel was kind of a scary thing. I think I even had glasses on for it, and if I wear my glasses, everything kind of shines back, and I look like a Geordie, from Star Trek. You just can't see anything. So trust me, if I'm outside, I need glasses. I can't, but this I don't. Amazed how polished you were for that, and wow,
I
I
don't
hate to
know.
do even more than that.
I don't know. I'd say polished.
Go back and look at the 1958 NFL championship game I did and scared half to death, and it's like, oh, I watched that. Oh God, did you really? Why? But from you were very comfortable from the start, and that so you did the podcast. Talk about the podcasting, and then we can go to the YouTube.
All right. Well, I think I can say one of the reasons why I'm so comfortable with public speaking is my time in the service. Because you have to be kind of pretty. It's a cocksure attitude you have to have when you're in the military. There's no getting around it. If you don't have that cocksure attitude, if you're not good at enunciating and articulating yourself and being able to hand yourself in a verbal type jousting environment that the military is, you're gonna get eaten alive. So I have complete 100% confidence in myself, my abilities, and my skills, and I have no problem projecting that. I'm a personality. I've got a lot of personality. May not be the best personality, but I got it. I have no problem with public speaking or putting myself out there. I never have. Well, I did it before I joined the military. So when you see me on the videos, that's just me in real life as well, for the most part. When you see me get excited, I'm really getting excited over something. If you've seen my gunslinger video,
I was going to bring that up. I was going to bring it up. I'll bring it up now, but we've all felt that joy. We've all felt that joy. We'll talk about that a little bit later. All
bliss.
Right.
That's what it is. Bliss.
So you were. I didn't go through and watch your second or third video, but as you're going through, all excited about all these counters and hit points and chits, which rhymes with shits, and all that. You right from your first solo video, you were pretty clear, but you had done podcasting, and you had said earlier that you'd done some solo podcasting.
Yeah. So I was on the Flames of War podcast, and actually, if you want to go back and find it, just Google Panzer Funk Radio, and you should be able to find our old Flames of War podcast. It's actually let me see if I can bring up the website. But the guys are still doing the podcast. They do it, I think, about once or twice a month now. Yeah. And I was instrumental in that in the first 6 or 8 episodes, and then I had a lot of personality conflicts with a few of the guys, and I just decided, screw it, I'm going to go ahead and do my own thing. There we go. There it is. And so since I was an administrator as part of the podcast, I had access to their podcasting capabilities. So I just recorded my podcasts and put it up and piggybacked off of their podcast, and people were fine with it because anybody who subscribed to our channel, they got multiple podcasts, which was always a good thing. And I
Well,
did the
did make you the
podcast.
moderator. Okay.
Yeah, you did long time ago. uh, um, and so I did my own podcasting thing for about a year, 26 episodes, a little over half, between half a year and a year. I was trying to put one out a week. Um, but it got to the point where I was doing unboxings and I wanted to show people what were in these boxes that I was getting, especially like you said, the first one I did, Berlin 45, that I'd gotten from my buddy over in Poland. And I didn't feel I was doing justice to the contents without showing it to you. So, and I had been following a couple of video war game podcast or video casts. A buddy of mine, Kevin, the CEO over at Big Board Gaming, and I followed him. I really liked him. There was another one, Stuka Joe, good friend of mine, Derek Case. He doesn't do video casting anymore, but there were these guys that I followed, and I hate to sound narcissistic about it. It's like, wow, if those guys can do it, so can I. So
there's nothing wrong with having an ego doing this. I
mean, there's a thin line between self-confidence and narcissism. I kind of skate that line back and forth quite often.
Usually, but to say what separates a 15 and a 16-year-old boy, but that's a different.
So I sat down, and it must have taken me 2 days to figure out, all right, I can record a video. Now, how do I upload it to YouTube? And it took me a couple days, and I spent a lot of time watching YouTube videos and surfing the web to try to figure it. But I eventually figured it out. It's like, hey, I can do this with video now. I don't need to do the podcast anymore. And so at that point, I just, all right, screw the podcast. I don't need the podcast anymore. I've got video. And that's all I
look at us instead. Oh no,
that's right. Who wants to look at my ugly mug? I don't care. You're looking at it anyways. And so that's kind of where it took off from there. I just said, all right, this podcasting thing's for the birds. Why would I want to just talk about it when I can actually show you, and I can actually play these games and show you what I'm doing rather than trying to describe them to you. So, and that's how I shifted from the podcast to the video blogging.
Okay, so the next logical question is, since we all have one common friend, how the hell did you get involved with Al Red Sox fan? Because Al's not a war gamer.
You would think that. He's done a little bit. He hasn't done a lot he hasn't streamed a lot. And Al definitely is definitely the sports guru and god that he is. But he was in a live stream that a buddy of mine was doing, Todd the Itinerant Hobbyist. And I think it was like me and Todd. Well, Todd was doing the stream and I was in the channel. And all of a sudden this guy, Al the Red Sox fan, crops up and starts asking questions. And I'm thinking, is this guy a troll? Because you always got to think that. Red Sox fan in a wargaming.
Little did we know.
Yeah, little did we know. But he was asking pertinent and poignant questions. And I just started answering them because Todd wasn't paying attention. Todd was doing his stream. He was playing his game. He wasn't. And so it's like, all right, well, he's asking questions. I can answer. I will go ahead and answer. And I just started answering them. And so, and by this point, I'd been year and a half, 2 years that I've been doing my own podcasting or my own video casting. So I went over and I checked out his YouTube page. It's like, wow, this guy's not a troll. No. He does a lot of sports simming. Oh, he does this stuff on computer. Oh, and he does the old Strat. Yeah, I remember the old Strat stuff. And that was about the time I was also really kind of into the second season from Play.com. And he was doing some football, action PC football season at the time. It's like, all right, so hey, I'm into football. Let me check this stuff out. And the first video I watched, I was just hooked because Al has such passion for his announcing. It's infectious, and it is a joy to listen to.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So I just, hey, right there, subscribe. Let me know whenever he's doing anything. I'm right there with you. And then he was doing his Saturday night chats with Al. It was him and Doc mostly, and Chris was in there as well. And I was just being my normal smart ass self in the chat. And chat goes, "We need to get you on with chats with Al." It's like, okay.
It's pretty much how I felt when they said you're joining us. Like, dude, I don't watch movies. I don't watch a TV series a year. Game of Thrones? Sure. Let me talk to you. Let me tell you everything I know about Game of Thrones. It matches about my knowledge of the modern NBA, okay? They have a team in Sacramento now for the last 30 years. Okay, there's my knowledge of the NBA. I think LeBron James plays for the Lakers now, and they suck, which is great as an old Celtic fan, but that's about it. Game of what? And here I am, several months later, figuring out what drugs they take on Sesame Street, which was fan-freaking-tastic.
Had fun with that. Always have a good time with Al. Al is enough of a squirrel that we can never plan what we're going to do because we know he's going to go off the rails.
Oh yeah, we hope for it.
And it's enjoy. Oh yeah, well I go off the rails too.
What you drinking? That's not coffee. What's in that cup? Oh.
It's Irish coffee, isn't it, Al? Of course it is. We know.
I hope he's okay. He hasn't been in the chat. MP Fox is cruising for a banning because he says, "Always be leery of a Red Sox fan." You can't.
Well, and honestly, I'm West Coast, so I have a natural.
You have a pass.
Well, no, I have a natural distrust of East Coast teams.
That's true.
I'm a Broncos fan. I don't like baseball. I'm going to let you know.
I know that.
I really don't like baseball. It bores me to tears. I like hockey. I like hockey even less. See, football, that's my sport. Football, I enjoy. Well, I'm not football on like the level that you and Al are, but I will watch football.
No, I'm not even football on the level that Al is. I tell it because people like to watch it. If, once you get into it, I have a good time. But as far as, okay, we'll do it. It's not. No, I mean, I watched more football than Shirley because it was on when I was watching Al doing Strange Brigade. I had much more fun watching him try to shoot cats, right? And then whatever I was seeing. Donkey go on. So yeah. No, he when I was doing games on my own channel, well, this is my own channel. On the other one, he found me. I think he watched that 1958 giant Colt game. And apparently 1,200 people have watched that giant Colt game. In fact, I think one of the first times I actually pulled Chris aside to chat with him. Oh, yeah, I know you from, the giant Colt game. Good.
Hey, it doesn't matter if you think it's bad. If people remember you, that's a good thing.
Well, maybe not necessarily, because, God, you sucked at that, Ron. That's not what they said.
It's like Captain Jack. You've got to be the worst pirate I've ever heard of, but you have heard of me.
That's right.
It doesn't matter if I'm bad. You remembered me.
And so I got the job at Fanside to write about baseball, and he kept following me, which was kind of interesting because I didn't really write about the Red Sox. And eventually, I spent a year and a half writing about the Nationals for not very much money. And when it came back, he said, you should stream. I was going to write. And I said, no, you should stream. I enjoyed your streams. You should stream. Okay, I'll stream. You should do them live. You'll get a kick out of doing them live. I don't want to do them live. Do them live. You'll like it. Okay, and here we are. 9 months or 6 months later, I'm doing them live. And
Al's passion is very infectious, and he's got the right attitude and the right personality that he's able to collect us lost little souls and have able to merge us into a community that I didn't think I'd ever be a part of. That I think that is Al's gift to the world more than anything else.
Oh, for sure. And if he watches this later, thank you, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. I got nothing for love for Brother Al.
Oh, for Al personally, absolutely. Love the guy to pieces. My wife she says, when's your night that you're with Al? Is it Friday? Is it Friday or Saturday? It's Saturday night, honey. It's Saturday night, and it takes me 2 hours to fall asleep after I go to bed at 12:30 because I'm still wound up. And when I wake up Sunday morning and see what time you guys finish and go, on the call went till 3:27 a.m. 3:27 a.m. I went to
We've
bed at
done that. We've done that a
5:01.
few times. Yeah,
What
we've
the hell
done that
did
a
you
few
talk about for
times.
4 hours? But no,
Squirrel.
absolutely, and it's an eclectic bunch too. I mean, yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I could understand if Al has put together a bunch of sports people or a bunch of war gamers or a bunch of pop culture, but he's managed to bring us all together. And again, it's community I've never seen like that. I mean,
Absolutely. Absolutely, and it's not sports, and it's not wargaming, and like I said, you could talk in Games of Thrones or movies, and and then I can just see you, and I get going. But yeah, but it all works, and it's hilarious. It really
yes,
is.
and that is probably the the genius of what Al has done is that he's made it work for us.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, before we open it up for questions, we've already been at this for an hour. Doesn't You're a solo gamer.
I am.
For games that don't necessarily, I mean, when I was in college, reason number 17 gazillion and five, I flunked out of Minnesota College. You did the sports gaming thing, and we did we had the Strat Baseball League, a Strat Hockey League, and someone brought in Strat Football. It's all gateway. Some people do weed, some people do Jack Daniels, and some of us just got into cards and dice gaming. But the solo thing was like, how much of a social moron are you to sit here by yourself and play these games? And here we are 30 years later. Not only am I playing these games by myself, I'm doing them on YouTube live with 10 to 15 people at a time watching. I'll go back through the next day and go, 102 people watched me at once play a baseball game from 1982. And no one really said, Ron, you're a fucking dork by doing that. I guess I'm not monetized anyway. I guess it doesn't really matter. How dorkish is that? This is the stuff that doesn't get you married or laid or, even the magazines you look at you do what? No, turn the page. You go read the article. You're not enjoying me. So I've watched some of your stuff, obviously, and I'm going, at least now with the solo sports stuff, I mean, yes, the teams, you got to be fair for both sides, but that's a little different between playing a football game and knowing what defense to call. Look, I'm going to pretend that this Japanese task force is not sitting at A8. I'm not going to take all my things and blow the snot out of hex A8. How do you do that and enjoy it?
It takes lots of practice. I think you have to divest yourself of the meta knowledge, and when I was younger, I would definitely play, and it was a bias slanted towards one side or the other. It's taken me a long time to get to the point where I can just sit back, decide in my mind, even though I know all the parameters, I see the map board, what would this side in my mind, what would they be doing and what would this side be doing, and be able to play both of them with that kind of AI I've got set up in my mind of these are the goals they're trying to accomplish. These are what this side's trying to do. This is what this side's trying to do. And as we all know, no plan survives first contact. Anyways, so but it takes some work to divest myself from being interested in winning, who wins and who loses, and I just want to play to see what happens, playing both sides to the best of my ability and trying to divorce myself from the meta knowledge that I have and go on the assumption of what would these commanders know in these conditions. It's not easy. I have my biases both one way or another. You take a look at the Coral Sea battle, I was definitely biased towards the Americans. It's there. A bias one way or another is always going to exist. But I try to do my best to make sure I divorce myself from that. I'm not always successful. There is, like I said, there's always bias, but I've been doing solo gaming for so long, and I find it more fun this way. If I just decide I'm going to raffle stomp one side or the other, that's no fun to me.
Right.
And I get to play 2 games in one. Because when I used to play, it's me just raffle stomping one side. It's like, all right, I'm just playing one half of the game. Now, since I'm playing both sides, I basically get 2 games for the price of one because I'm getting to play the game from 2 different aspects at the same time. And that, to me, that's fun. That's enjoyable.
Yeah, if you go into the cards and dice aspect of the sports, if you're playing by yourself, there is no AI. You've got to make the decisions for that. Now, in my teens and early 20s, if you honestly thought I was going to be an honest broker for a New York Yankee team, you were out of your cotton picking mind. I already owe a quarter of the swear jar, according to Sports Time Machine, and ID Jesters called me a dork. Love you,
See,
Kurt.
I'm a geek. I embrace the term geek. I own that. I am a geek.
Oh yeah, no, I do now. But as I find that I'm older, that I get, look, I've invested my time into this. I may, especially doing the streaming thing. The only time I felt bad about a team losing was in the football replay. Not when your Broncos beat the Chiefs that particular afternoon because they called the wrong play, but when the Patriots crashed out of the playoffs, because you could see it in the chat. They were excited. The Patriots were going to do this. and Pittsburgh came from 10 down to win. And that really was the first time in any of the stuff that I've done at this stage of my career. And actually, they lost. I know. And I'm not even a Patriot fan. They were the Patriots growing up. I grew up there was one kid. We had a token Patriot fan. We had Cowboy fans and we had Steeler fans. And when Montana got good, we got Niner fans. But nobody in Southern Vermont, at least in my community, was a Patriot fan. Who the hell would root for them? No. Go to explain to now anyone under the age of 40 about that, and they're going to look at you like nine arms and sweat. They do that to me anyway. Anthony says that balance is good. Got my jock side, nerd side makes life great. Nerds get laid too. Apparently, you got to work out for that. Maybe that's my problem. but yeah, you're gonna, you bring through a sense of enjoyment through that. I would just think that it would be. There's if to use a term from wargaming, there's always a fog of war in a sports game. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who's going to get hurt or who has the bad game or who just gets hot at the right time. As we talked about, I know that, you got the 16 divisions are sitting right there in the port of Tokyo, and on turn 4, they're coming for me. I better do that right, But yeah, that's the whole essence of wargaming. Talk about it before we get to people's questions. Advanced Squad Leader, which is the mother. If we said that City Skylines is the mother of all Windows processing hogs, this game is You've done some Dungeons and Dragons. You've done some role playing. The books that go for that are thick, but Wikipedia can't be as thick as some of the stuff for Advanced Squad Leader.
Last time I checked, my copy of Advanced Squad Leader, before I got rid of it, was over 600 pages. And that's with expansions. Rules, right? That's the rule book. Yeah, a good chunk of that is the rules, but then there's also the organizational and tables of equipment, and there's not all of that is completely rules. The actual ASL rule, the rules, chapter A, B, C, D, and G, I think, are the most important ones. You need chapter A, definitely. Chapter B is terrain, but it's a neuroses. It's
it is there and go, how many hit points have I got left on this particular?
It is the most complicated war game in existence. Is it the most realistic? No, but it is the most complicated. The designer of Advanced Squad Leader, Ed Greenwood, when he was writing, he's like, I don't know why we're making this so complicated. Nobody's going to freaking play this. Boy, was he wrong. It's one of those lifestyle games. Honestly, if you want to be good at Advanced Squad Leader, you literally have to just play Squad Leader.
That's nuts.
Which is fine. There are guys out there that do it.
Yeah.
A lot of the guys in the group that I used to hang with, probably the 15 to 20 of them, 10 to 15 of them just played ASL. And it showed they were good at it. I don't want to devote myself to one game. I can't. I don't like being a specialist. I like being a generalist. There's something because I can find enjoyment. Of course, I should also say my bar is real low for what I enjoy. It doesn't take much for me to be happy with something, but I like to play a bunch of other things. Now, ASL is fun. I just can't play it anymore because I hated feeling like I gave birth to an accountant every time I played. And I don't want to feel like I give birth to an accountant when I play
Just
games.
describe the whole experience of the Football Manager series on the computer, which basically you take over a soccer club and you do press conferences and you have to come up with the right tactics and you've got to massage players' egos. And you got to win and keep people happy. The learning curve on that, and Eve Online, which is another one that's a lifestyle. Oh yeah, I played that too, and that was just, oh my god, really? I just want to mine a freaking rock without getting blown up. Okay, can I do that? Really? I just want to turn this into my thing. No, I don't want to get into character and any. Yes, I get it. All right, before. We will now entertain for those of you that are still watching. Actually, there's 12 of you still watching.
Wow.
Yeah, we've actually done quite well. Dave, you don't have time to play Eve. Eve is a job. All right. Well,
it literally is. I played Eve when it first came out, and it literally takes over your life as a job.
It's one of those things that I think about doing in the wintertime when I'm stuck 20 hours a day, when I'm inside this room for 23 hours a day. That's what you learn to play Eve. And then I found YouTube and decided that YouTube was a hell of a lot more fun than Eve. I actually got pretty good at poker one year because anyway. So Eve is a multi player online role playing game, which has anywhere from 18 to 30,000 people playing at one time. And the entire premise of the game in space form is to, pardon my language, but take your best friend over a table and do him in the ass without necessarily lube, wine, or food. And that game costs real money, and there have been thousands and thousands of dollars stolen from people in the form of pixelated spaceships, just to screw someone over for having a bad experience when they were newbies together. I'm not making that up. That is, Devin can.
Yeah, if you go to Eve, just go to YouTube and do Eve Corporate Wars, you will see this stuff Eve has spilled out into real life. People are taking this so seriously that they're going after each other in real life.
I mean, so you talk about the divide between card and dice and computer sports players. No, we're singing kumbaya and eating tofuti dogs together compared to some of that crap. Anyway, so we want your questions. As I've lost people for saying that. So while you guys think about your questions, have you ever designed a game?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I haven't designed a system, but I have designed expansions for a system. There's a game out there called the Advanced Tobruk system, which sounds like the Advanced Squad Leader system because it is very similar to the Advanced Squad Leader system. A guy named Hal Hawk back in the 70s made the original Avalon Hill game Tobruk. You and I have talked about this before. I think it was you and I. Was it you and I? No, it may have been somebody else. Probably.
I don't think I've talked with you about that, but
okay, so I think it was someone else then. But it was a very complicated, it was a 1970s Avalon Hill war game. Well, in the late 80s, mid 80s, a guy named Ray Tapio got the rights to it from Hal Hawk and designed a system that was very similar to what his original system was, but it was also very similar to Advanced Squad Leader. And I won't get into the whole kerfluffle with him, with Ray's community relations with the Advanced Squad Leader and the Advanced Tobruk community. But suffice to say, he came up with this game, has been publishing it for 25 some odd years, and I was fortunate enough Well, if you want to consider it that. I designed a couple modules. Well, it ended up being 4. I have 4 different titles that I've published, which are all based on the exact same design. Because the thing about ATS is it's the exact same scale as ASL, and the counters are almost identical, which is genius on Ray's part, because if someone designs something for ATS for him, he'll just convert it into ASL. He makes double the money for it, which is also one of the reasons why not a lot of people like Ray, is because he has done that. Ray's a businessman from the word go.
There really is a lot of similarities between the sports gaming community and the wargaming community.
Oh, you have no idea. It's just insane. But yeah, I was a designer for Critical Hit Incorporated for a couple of years, and designed. I basically designed one module, but I got 4 titles out of it, because it was ASL, ATS, first edition, and second edition. So yes, I am a published game designer, although I haven't designed. Thank you. I haven't actually designed a game. I just designed expansions for a game. So
nothing wrong with that. And that's the expansions are the same thing as a season. So there's,
basically, yeah.
Stranded on a Desert Island, as Anthony takes actually a video idea that I stole from the BBC. Stranded on a desert island, or a deserted island, or on an island with lots of electricity. I don't care. What 3 games do you take with you?
Oh God, are we putting in computer or just
sure.
board?
That's what I did. Well, maybe.
Well, if it's going to be computer, that means I have electricity. If I have electricity, that means I'm contacting the outside world. So we're going to ignore the computers. It's just straight up board games. Honestly, the entire ASL catalog, just because there are literally thousands of scenarios for it. I could spend an entire lifetime playing ASL on a deserted island. The other 2 games up front from Avalon Hill, just because
what's that one about?
It's a man-to-man card-driven system. It was kind of a unique system when Avalon Hill came out for it in 1983. You have a squad, and each unit is a soldier or a tank or an anti-tank gun, and it's very, very how is it a buddy of mine referred to it as? Not micro decision making, where you're literally making a decision for each guy in your squad what they're doing. And it's based on a card draw system, so it's got a good fog of war. There's a lot of it. There were 2 major expansions. So you got the Americans, Germans, British, Russians, French, Italian, Japanese, guerrillas, a whole bunch of it. So there's that, and probably what else? What else would I take with me? A 3rd game. That changes on my mood from day of the week to day of the week. Right now, I would say Gunslinger. I'd bring Gunslinger with me, but I'm not sure. 6 months ago, I wouldn't have said that, and 6 months from now, I'm not sure I'd say that either.
We'll get to Gunslinger in a moment. Would that be all right? Dave asked, who's hopped up on NyQuil, so pardon this question as it is. If you were a candy bar, which one would you be?
If I was a candy bar, which one would I be?
Thanks for the intelligent question, Dave.
No, hey, that's fine. It's making me think. It's making me think more than I making me think thunked more than I've thunked the rest of the episode. I don't know. Almond Joy. Almond Joy's got nuts. Nuts as in being crazy.
Sure, yeah.
Let's clarify that, right?
You haven't had to think a lot, because you've actually, as I popped up with the question, you've answered it. It's great. I've no trouble with it. It's like, well, Hal, if we're going there, Ginger or Mary Ann? You will be judged by the answer to this.
Mary Ann.
Yes, that's right. God.
I mean, Mary Ann, the girl next door. Kind of got to go for that. I mean, part of me knee-jerk Ginger, large boobs. But yeah, you got to go with Mary Ann just because she's more the girl next door type.
Oh, sorry, I didn't even ask about that. Favorite general?
Let's see. Favorite historical general.
Favorite historical general.
Ooh. Comes down to 2. Caesar or Rommel.
Good choices.
Mm-hmm.
Good choices. Wrestling. We didn't even get into that. We missed you on St. Patrick's Day, by the way. I thought about doing wrestling thing. I think I did a fight instead.
Yeah, well, I was laid up on the couch with my knees giving me issues, and I just was not in the
No,
mindset to be able to record on St. Patty's Day. So
Sailor Moon was a ring girl again, but yes, we do. But yeah, you mean
nice.
I should just do a random one and call that the dominatrix and see if Al actually pays attention.
Oh, hey, you throw that in there, I'm sure he will.
Yeah. What wrestling did you grow up with? Sports Time Machine asks, and what did you enjoy the most?
For the most part, Glow and Pow.
So women's wrestling is really what you got into.
Oh well, see, I knew it was what WWE back then, Hulk Hogan and Rowdy Roddy Piper, Andre the Giant, but that was, it was wrestling. It's like, yeah, all right, cool. I mean, I had just as much manly interest in it as everything else, but Glow and Pow were just funny. I mean, the WWE had serious storylines. Glow and Pow, they were characters of themselves, and it was funny, and they were doing skits well before what Raw's doing nowadays. I mean, they had ongoing storylines. So I think it was more the humor aspect of it that got me sucked into Pow and Glow than it being women's wrestling. To me, it wasn't.
It wasn't overtly sexual, is what you're trying to say.
No, it wasn't. It was not in the least. Not in the least. It was just they were women wrestlers, and there were male. I don't know. I'm a child of the '70s. It's been hammered into me. Everybody's equals. I didn't see them as female wrestlers. I saw them as hilarious wrestlers doing cool shtick. Which, if I got the choice between serious, semi-serious, or semi-camp, I'm going with semi-camp every time.
Oh, sure.
It's not that, like I said, it's not that they were female wrestlers. It's just what the content was, which is really what sucked me into it.
And there really are good articles in Playboy. I was a little older when I discovered that, but they really are good articles in Playboy. And I agree with that. You go back to the mid '80s and the cable and the Mean Gene Okerlund and the Bobby the Brain Heenan interviews, and the wrestling in the '70s with George the Animal Steele eating. You've heard me say that eating the turnbuckle and smile at the camera scared the living daylights out of me. But it was funny. It wasn't the comic book soap opera stuff. It was, where can we take this? I get that, and if it's happened to be women wrestlers, fine. But yeah, I mean, you were laughing. You weren't supposed to laugh, but that they did. They just kind of gave you the wink that there was someone slamming the hammer on the metal chair underneath the thing. Yeah, all right. ID Jester asks, which battle, as I see myself winking on camera, which battle do you think is the best to simulate and why?
It depends on what you define as best. I mean,
what do you have a go-to battle that intrigues you most? I know Al wants to talk to you about Coral Sea. You've talked about battles with him.
I don't really focus on any one particular battle. There are battles I don't like to cover just because everybody's done it. Battle of Bulge, Market Garden, D-Day, Stalingrad.
I like campaign. Is there a campaign that intrigues you more, or a series of conflicts?
Caesar's subdual of the Germanic tribes before he came back and crossed the Rubicon and kicked off the Roman Civil War. That's always good.
Okay, why?
The Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta.
Not a lot of hit points on that armor.
No, not on that one. Really, I like a lot of Eastern Front stuff, but not like the big stuff. I mean, you take a step back. Operation Mars, the Soviet offensive in 1943 or 42. Operation Conrad, the efforts to relieve the siege of Budapest. Anything of the Arab-Israeli wars. I
Those are
love
intriguing, sure.
63, 70, all the 67, all the Arab-Israeli wars. I don't like to narrow myself to just one battle because there's just so much cool stuff out there. Like I said, I'm a generalist. I'm not a specificist. Specificity. I'm not specific to any one battle. I like to spread myself out.
What about you? We've talked about a lot of different conflicts and stuff that you've simulated, but you've not mentioned Vietnam.
Vietnam is one I kind of shy away from a little bit, mainly just politicized as it was, and I had several uncles that served in Vietnam.
Yep, me too.
But there haven't been a lot of good Vietnam games that have come out that I've actually found that I've enjoyed.
And guerrilla warfare can't be all exciting to play because you know what it really is.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not even so much guerrilla warfare. It was a very, very political war. A lot of rules of engagement. The military's hands were tied. We could have ended the war in 6 months if we'd have just we could have put 3 divisions at Saigon and just marched them north through Vietnam and Cambodia. We could have ended, but there was just so much political constraints. I mean, I get why we were there. We had to stop the advancement of communism. Kids these days just don't see that. And even people who were alive at the time didn't see the necessity. I see the necessity of it. It was just too politicized. So,
right.
Yeah, Vietnam is one. I have played games covering Vietnam. It's not one that's high on my list. I think just because it was so politicized.
Yeah.
And I try to stay away from politics.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, you and I are young enough that we missed Vietnam, but our parents didn't miss Vietnam. And my mother was 19 when she, I had an uncle who did at least one tour. I've read the letters. And he's pretty gung ho and served in Alaska and worked on the pipeline and all that. I mean, he stayed in the service. He was stationed in South Dakota for a long time.
All right, nothing but missile silos out in South Dakota.
That's right. That's a good place for him. Evgeny Crosby asked maybe one of the most important questions of all time. And again, there's only one right answer to this: butter or margarine?
Butter.
Yeah, like I said, there was only one right answer, and you've got them both. You got Mary Ann and butter.
So I get into the bunker.
Yes, you do. You get into my bunker. We won't talk politics. Clinton Parks asks, if there was one battle that you would want to have witnessed in real life, which one would you want to see? And this goes back to even when Clinton served back in the Judean battles of Egypt.
Just one?
Yeah. I mean, is there a favorite? A favorite maybe isn't the word, but the one.
Well, it's not so much a favorite one. It's what one would I want to see that I would think had the greatest historical impact. The Spartans stand at 300 or the Spartans stand against the Persians.
You big mythology fan?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Depends on the mythology. I love Egyptian mythology. I love Greco-Roman mythology.
Yes, that's where I was
Zoroastrian, not so much. But it depends on the mythology. But yes, I have consumed myself with certain mythoses quite time and time again.
Clinton actually says Thermopylae.
Thermopylae would be a good one. I would probably take Marathon over Thermopylae. Just because I think the Marathon was a bit bigger and had more of a lasting impact. The third siege of Jerusalem, Saladin against the Leper Prince, that would be kind of cool to watch. I would like to have seen that one. It's tough to say for World War II because World War II battles were usually day-long or week or month-long campaigns.
They were campaigns.
Whereas you go back to the Middle Age.
300. Thermopylae, Clinton says. So you both agree.
Yeah. But yeah. You're right.
I.E.
I don't know
Jester
why I
says
forgot that.
Waterloo.
See, even I have a great fascination with Napoleon at Waterloo, but I think I would probably take Borodino over Waterloo.
Explain that for people who don't know.
Borodino was one of the turning battles of Napoleon's Russian campaign. He technically won the fight, but it ended up costing him the war. It basically comes down to Soviets throwing lots and lots of people at you until they bury you in bodies, which is what the Soviet or the Russian tactic.
They lost 20 million in that war. So let's see what else people are asking about. Bobby wants you to hit the D-Day. Because even though I think the war was pretty much just a done deal at that point, actually getting on the mainland and ending it, they still had to do it. And
Saving Private Ryan. You want to see what D-Day was like? Watch Saving Private Ryan. That's that's that right there.
But also if you're talking more of a Cold War sense, the whole campaign of getting man on the Apollo program.
Oh, the Apollo program. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Robbie, the Psalm, and someone asked about World War I, and the question is scrolled up, and it's at the other monitor. So
I remember the question: what weapon influenced the outcome of that war? I don't think there was any one weapon that influenced the outcome of the war. As soon as the Americans showed up, it was game over at that point. The simple fact is Germany was just being out manpowered, and both sides. And when you get down to it, there was no tactics in that war. The general hierarchy of the alliance forces, the British, the Canadians, the French, they knew they had more manpower than Germany. So by 1915, they decided, all right, we just have to wear them down. We have to wait them out. There was no point to them trying to fight the war to win it. Their whole objective was to try to outlast the Germans. That's not how you fight a war. There's no weapons that could have been developed that could have changed that type of strategic mentality from the higher command. Were there a lot of weapons that were invented that were instrumental in how war would be fought? Yes, but I don't think any of them actually changed the outcome of the war. German flamethrowers, the advent of biplanes and using them as ground support, even the advent. I can't talk right now. The invention of tanks. All of them, machine guns, all of them really good inventions, didn't change how the war was going to outcome regardless. And like I said, by the time the Americans jumped in, it's like, well, the British and French were already outnumbering the Germans. Now we've just got a whole fresh new couple army groups. There was no weapon that shortened the war. It was just, the French and British's. Well, and I understand they didn't want to lose anything out to Germany. I get it, but it was
like watching Big 8 football in the 1970s. Everyone ran the wishbone. You knew that what was coming. And so it actually took more land in a football game between Nebraska and Colorado in 1978 than World War I, but pretty much was the same thing. It was just counter wave of wave after wave of infantry after infantry and just one-dimensional trench warfare, which you look at the Napoleonic Wars, it seemed to me that those were a lot, even though there was all infantry and basic cavalry, that there was a lot more finesse and thought behind it than
it was more maneuver. It was all about maneuver in the Napoleonic era and civil, and even in the Civil War, it was all about maneuver. It was about trying to outflank your opponents, not digging a trench line from friggin' Italy to France or Italy and the English Channel, and just basically sitting behind it. So
it's 4th and 1 forever, and that's how Any more questions here from my dear friend Original Grognard before we send him back on his merry way? Talk about Gunslinger. Now, to set this up, you got a good friend of yours, the itinerant hobbit, sent this game, and this was your absolute favorite game as a kid. And you've discovered, again, the shortcomings of said game, but just watching you go through that box and discover that he had paid a good chunk of money for that, the sheer joy. We talked about Al earlier and the joy that comes through when he's getting the snot kicked out of him, or when he's playing Fran Tarkin in football and not getting the snot kicked out of him. But the sheer joy in your voice and rediscovering why you love that ran through the. You don't have to know anything about that type of gaming at all to know that this was a big, hairy deal for you.
Oh, BFHD, huge deal for me.
Why?
Yeah,
Go through
I,
that for a couple minutes.
I don't know why it has taken mythic proportions in my mind. I didn't play.
Well, we all have that childhood toy, Devin. If you
Yeah. And I enjoyed the game back then, but I guess because it hits one of my I call them my blanky comfort zones, the things that I can wrap myself in up to make myself feel good, which is Western movies and Elvis movies, and I will deny this to the next part. ABBA songs. You will never hear me admit that again. Those are for me are comfortable because
we're
they harken
all
back
singing Dancing Queen on Saturday. You know that.
No. They harken back to the nostalgia of my childhood, and I realize a lot of what I'm seeing is through the rose-tinted glasses of nostalgia, but it's still what makes me feel comfortable. I go to a country fair. We have Western Washington. We have one of the largest fairs on the West Coast, the Puyallup Fair, every year, and I love going there every year. And it's just the smell, the odoriferous sense of nature, as I put it. It's horseshit and hay and just
you talked about growing up on the farm. Yeah,
exactly. Those invoke happy, blissful memories to me, and this game does that because I have attached so much of who I am to growing up on the farm, cowboy movies, westerns, and such like that, that the game literally has taken a larger than life presence in my mind. Is it a great game? No. It sometimes really sucks. It could be very fast and brutal. You get hit with one bullet and you're done. But
no other hit points on that one. No.
Well, yeah, pretty much. Well, it's not so much the hit points as bullets do lots of damage to you.
Yes.
But that's that's gunfights in general, and like I said, cowboys, the American gunslinger, the American West is a uniquely American phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
The mythos of the cowboy, the mythos
of
the
Wild West, absolutely.
Exactly, it is uniquely American, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again. America. I love America. You will never hear me apologize for being an American. So since it links so much to what my identity is as an adult, that it gives me so much comfort of something of that from my childhood. And it's just, I've got it set. I've started setting it up on my table. I've gone through the rules. It's like, all right, I got to get down. I got to start recording this. And there's part of me that's going through my, I can do this as a play-by-form. Maybe I can get a bunch of people together, give them a character, set out the basics, and I'm thinking of doing, playing, sharing this with other people and doing it kind of a play-by-post, putting a picture up. All right, this is the map, and this is where you are. These are your action cards that each of you have. And it can be very structured, played that way very easily. So yeah, that's Gunslinger.
That's very cool. ID now says that your new nickname is Dancing Queen.
No,
I didn't think so.
No.
Do you have a response to that? I'm not sure he saw that because when there's only two of us, it's only the.
Well, that's probably a good thing he didn't see that then.
But there was a bird from Seattle that flew.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yes, very much.
So one last call for questions here for my dear friend Devin before we say goodnight. You've asked. I guess I was going to ask if there's. Is there, okay, let me try to phrase it this way. Is there a campaign or a war you would like to see modeled in a way that you would maybe not enjoy more, but maybe is under modeled? And we talked about Vietnam, but you said that maybe the air wars, I think you talked about, but you talked a little bit about the Greco-Roman things and that maybe not play for the rest of your life, but something that if someone redid a series now, what would be a first day buy for you? Maybe.
I'm attracted to the Roman era a lot. Not as much as I am World War II, but honestly, World War II has been done to death. I think I can't say that the Roman Empire, the Roman Republic, the three different phases of Roman imperialism have been done to death, but there's more can be done for it. Yeah, I just a lot of ancients. I actually am sucked into a lot of ancients. I really do enjoy ancients. It's just I haven't found a lot of games out there that work for me when it comes to ancients. So I would like to see more of that.
What about the Shogun era? You talked to
zero interest. Really zero interest. It's I lived in Japan for a long time. I am. How do I put this without sounding insulting?
You don't care?
Well, no, it's not that I don't care. It's just it's the Middle Ages European knights with swords with a different skin.
Yeah,
I mean, it's rank and file warfare. It's got the swordsman, it's got the bowman, it's got noble cavalry, which is basically European warfare of the Middle Ages as well. I don't see, in my mind, there's no difference between the two. Mm-hmm. I know there is. I mean, the practical part of me realizes there's a huge, immense difference between the two. But there's enough similarities there that I have put them both in one department of my mind, and just the Middle Ages don't do much for me. I mean, there's an interest there, and I played total.
No, but I hear you. It's the same without the Monty Python movies and the cheese-eating surrender movies. See, I did get a movie thing in there, and some I've watched. Your new best friend ID wants to know what your favorite ABBA song is.
Jeez, I like Dancing Queen, but Waterloo. It's as cheesy as it sounds. Waterloo.
I love Waterloo.
Take a chance on me. On it, my favorite one, probably Take a Chance on Me. And nice. Followed up very, very slimly by Waterloo.
Anthony from Bleacher Bumps Gaming says he's going to say Fernando, not that I know any ABBA songs. We all know ABBA songs. We don't want to admit that we know ABBA songs. I could.
They're the guilty pleasure. They're the guilty pleasure no one ever wants to admit.
The great BBC, world-renowned broadcasters. Okay, home of the Beatles, for Christ's sakes, the most requested group ever in the history of BBC late entertainment. ABBA.
Yep.
One Night in Bangkok was Murray Head Clinton. Not that Murray got any, but that was from the Broadway singer Murray Head.
It was about chess.
Yes, exactly. Bleacher Anthony says it's like knowing all the words to Afternoon Delight. Thinking of you is working up an appetite. I'm going to go home and have a little Afternoon Delight. And in my case, it'd be hitting the Dunkin' Donuts on the way home. Start and a good Boston cream. All right, my friend, thank you so much. I do appreciate this. This 2 hours just really flew right by.
It did. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it, sir.
All right. Well, hopefully Al's feeling up to doing chat with Al this week because Mr. Red Sox fan did not show up in the chat tonight, which is kind of
he's got a lot of real life stuff that he's
he does, dealing with, and so we're thinking of him and hope that everything is going well. But I don't know who we're doing next in the Ron Juckett Show. If you are interested in doing the Ron Juckett Show, and you can see just how hard I interrogated Devin throughout this entire 2 hours. SGS VT Bub, Sam Gulf Sam, Victor Tango, Bravo, Umbrella Bravo. Yeah, write that one down, huh? At gmail.com, and we'll get you on. There's a couple people I'd love to have on, and so we'll do that real soon. So tomorrow is football again at noontime. No excuse for Devin not to get up at 9 in.the morning to listen to the Patriots and 90 Bills. Hey,
9 o'clock in the morning to you is like 6 o'clock in the morning to me. That's
no, it's noontime here. It's a 9 a.m. game for you.
That's still too early on a Saturday.
It's a Friday tomorrow.
Whatever. I work from home, remember?
Yeah, so do I. At least I remember my days of the week. Okay, and so Emily's telling me it's time for me to play Mommy Eater Herder. So on that note, thanks a bunch to Devin, and you can follow the original Grognard at his channel on YouTube, and he's got a Facebook page that you can that he's got some members through, and when he posts his playthroughs for his games. And so, thanks a bunch. We'll do this again real soon. For now, we'll talk to you the next time.